one of the biggest problems that we've been getting calls on is producers. I mean, they won't normally wean those calves until in the fall. And so they're, what are we going to do with their calves right now? I mean, we can barely keep our cows going. Some of these calves, especially this year, going into sometimes the breed up wasn't so good. So we have some scattered, calves are maybe a little bit more scattered than they usually are. So, what's some options that a producer could do there?
Well, the early weaning is one that most producers kind of go to first a lot of times in drought management. And there's two things there. One, it does really reduce the nutrient drain on that cow. And from that standpoint, it does reduce the drain on the forage supply. So there's two different things to think about there in the early weaning aspect of managing your cow herd. The early weaning, like I said, if you're weaning very lightweight calves, a lot of times that's something that can be done fairly economical in a dry lot situation. The thing that's changed in that is the grain prices. Used to, we could pull those calves off and keep them at home and grow them out fairly economically. Right now, unless you're set up to use some commodity feeds or something like that, it's a fairly costly exercise to wean those calves and to keep them. The thing that's in our favor this drought cycle, which I don't think we've ever had, is the market. And so we've got some leeway there that we can actually spend some money on these calves and still have the potential, to add enough weight at a low enough cost that we might be able to make that pencil. If not, they probably just need to sell them, even at lightweight, and send them on to somebody that has the ability to feed those commodities. And right now the prices are pretty good even on the lightweight cattle. Just because the inventory is down so low in our industry, that gives them an option to sell those calves and get them off their plate. One thing we don't consider enough to me in that early weaning process is the labor, particularly on the lightweight calves. And if you're trying to destock and cull cows and manage those cows and work cows all the time, you may not have enough time to spend with those baby calves. And so we really need to be cautious about that if we decide to keep them, that we don't get into a health wreck. And that's something you might mention is on these lightweight calves, what are some of the things that they're going to run into that they may not be accustomed to on a cow-calf operation?
And I think one of the big problems is we did have some rains last year, and so there's certainly a potential for a little bit more parasite loads early this spring. And so if those cattle weren't wormed earlier, there's certainly a possibility. Of course, worms are going to, more than anything, affect appetite, consumption, but indirectly they affect immunity. So in some of those light calves, if they weren't wormed early in the spring, that's certainly potential for some problems. The other problem is vaccination. And again, if you're early weaning those calves, I would certainly recommend that you try to get at least 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks before you wean them, get some vaccination. Get some 4-way virals in them, and so that at least have some immunity when you're weaning those calves.
I think the other thing to think about in that process, and we're talking about getting them up and processing them before we wean them, it's already so hot that we've got to take that into consideration as well as we go into that early weaning process, because that's going to stress the cows, it's going to stress the calves, stress the labor, everything else. So we need to make sure that we do that, and it may be a several-day process to getting the cattle up, getting them ready to work to where you can go in then early enough in the day and be finished by 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning at the latest.
And that's certainly, and that's a good point, Ron. We talk about starting to work early, but we don't talk about when we're going to end up. And when we vaccinate those calves, kind of think about it, the heat's building up. So if we quit say if we went ahead and worked till 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, actually about 2 or 3 hours after that vaccination's in there is when you're going to start to see the endotoxins released, etc. So that's a very good point. I think you need to change your working hours, and I'd say on most days like today, you'd want to be finished by 10 o'clock in the morning, and for the benefit of your cattle and for the benefit of your health.
Yeah, so it's going to take some change in mindset in the way we normally work cattle, and in the spring and the fall, and just because it's going to take longer a lot of times to sort those calves off and get them through and get them vaccinated. So they just need to be aware of that and plan for it. It's not something we can't plan around, but as the nights get to where they're not cooling below 80 degrees, heat stress accumulates in the cows too. They never have that chance to dissipate heat.
Exactly.
And so we have to be really cautious about not stressing those cows, particularly if they're in poor condition. And we add heat stress on top of that, we may actually cause some cows to succumb.